6 o'clock.
We will get rolling.
The Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the March 6th, 2023 Credit River City Council meeting. We will begin with approving or amending the agenda. Does anybody have anything they'd like to change on the agenda tonight?
Nope.
Nope. You want to add back your sign? The radar sign?
Yeah.
Should we put that general business 7.2? Continuation from the last meeting. Okay, anything else?
Make a motion.
Thank you, Leroy. Second. Thank you, Brent. I got a motion and a second to approve the agenda with the one change noted. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Next up, we have the sheriff's report. Deputy Strack, good evening. If you would turn that microphone on while you're up there too, please.
So our January report for, February report. We had 72 calls. Contracted, handled, which is Deputy Pearson and myself. We handled 48 of those calls, which puts it at 67% of the month. That's just calls for service. And then additionally, we had out of the 2 contract deputies, we had a total of 81 traffic stops. Probably see that number skyrocket in the next couple months. As the weather gets nice, people like to speed. There's nothing in the calls for service that really stood out. There was one drug stop in February. Couple medicals, couple alarms. We're starting to get more and more alarms. I don't know. They had couple fire alarms. So I don't know if people are forgetting to change their batteries. But,
Are some of those alarms, are they mostly just false triggers?
yeah. Today I had one today, and that was a bird food. I had one a couple weeks ago, and that was just old. The original smoke detectors.
Mhm.
You can change the batteries, but a lot of times those smoke detectors get filled with dust and it'll set it off. So I think people are just forgetting to change that stuff on how important that can be. Could also be that it was cold for a while. Back and forth with gas.
Mhm.
We did have a couple crashes, obviously with the snow weather, we had some rollovers. There was a rollover on February 2nd. Couple medicals, lip assists. And then outside of Credit River, there's been a couple major crashes that the deputies have assisted on. There was one last week or before at Panama, 190th. Our head on crash, so that takes some time from us too when we go and assist on that.
That was a fatal, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then that's the summary for the reports.
Should have been 2. One kid went flying.
Yeah.
No seatbelt
One
on.
big guy jumped from the vehicle,
Yeah.
not the one that was. Not good. Get transported, but did not die.
Yeah.
So, traffic stops wise for percentage, we're at 9, so the Pearson and I were contracted, we're at 96% and traffic stop. The other deputies are making a couple stops, usually it's probably pretty late.
Mhm.
So not bad for the numbers, we figured, I think we averaged or thought we would handle about 70% with the 2 deputies.
Yeah,
So,
pretty cool. Right there.
any questions on the report? Anything that stood out, I don't know if you guys, I sent it to Chris, so we can put up on that.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else that was in there that, we think you pretty much went over it all, Jeff. But we'll post it on the website and.
And then the safety tip thing is gonna be fraud safety, obviously with taxes coming. Be aware of the fraud and the tax frauds that people try to scam. I'm actually going through a fraud thing myself. Go figure. I woke up on Friday night with a charge on my Best Buy card. For computer, and it's getting sent to the software.
They picked a really good person to do that too.
And fill out my card, so.
Yeah.
There's data breaches going left and right, and people don't like to work. So, I think the biggest thing there is. It's wise to make sure you're changing your passwords. And I would change them frequently, I know it's frustrating, but the more you change your password, the harder it is for them to get it. And then one other thing is a community event or community safety, not necessarily just for Carter River, but for the entire county, is that the Scottsdale Sheriff's Office offers a car seat install or car seat checks. Our community engagement deputy Amy Lick does this. She does it by appointments. So if anybody knows anybody that has having a kid or has a young kid or still in a car seat, they need to know or have it checked. A lot of times they're installed wrong. You know, and with recent fatal, I mean, not that that kid was in a car seat, but if you're not in there, even though you're buckled up, if you're in it wrong, you can still be ejected from the vehicle or hurt you worse. So, I mean, that's a service that the sheriff's office would provide. And we can, you know, set something up, or they can call the sheriff's office, and set something up with Amy for install check.
Debbie Strack, are they doing any social media posts about that or anything to share, you know, to kind of publicize that a little bit?
But I didn't talk to Amy and Sergeant Wojciak, that's in charge of our community engagement, and maybe they'll have Sarah Deputy put up a post.
Yeah.
And then we can share it on.
Yep.
So.
Perfect. I
But
think
yeah,
that's good.
I can email them on that, and then they can share it. I know she does. A couple times a year, they do events, usually like at the fire stations, Jordan Fire Station, Shakopee. It's just, I don't think parents realize how important it is to actually have that car seat installed correctly.
Yeah.
So,
You almost have to get up in there and kneel down in it and hold the belts.
and a lot of
tight.
people put these seat protectors underneath it, which actually makes the car seat slide. So it's not even, you know, protects your car, but it doesn't protect your kid. That's all.
Yeah.
Other than that, nothing else. Is there any questions?
Council members, any thoughts, questions?
No, just the road restrictions are gonna go
Yeah.
on, so.
Next Friday, road restrictions come on. Now we have several roads and a whole map on our website of roads that are restricted. But they never come off. They're permanently restricted. We passed that resolution last year.
Yeah, and if there's, I mean, obviously I know a couple areas, but
Mhm.
if there's something that you see one. Send us an email, Pearson and I, and we can, at least we can make a presence there.
Yeah,
You know, maybe deter them up there or stop them or something, or some
Mhm.
violation outside of the restrictions, so. And inform people, I think a lot of it is some of it's education.
Yep.
You know, maybe we should. Pearson, right, hey, stop at Buckingham, just let them know the restrictions are on, try to use something else. Let's pick it up.
yeah,
That's one of the big ones.
it is absolutely. We got that culvert that's coming apart already there, so.
They pass through or?
Yeah, they do. They, you could, when they're on, their Mondays are the routes.
Yeah.
But there's trucks coming through on there nonstop. Yeah.
I worked up there, today. Let me try to reach out and see if I can talk to a supervisor. Just let them know that road restrictions are coming on.
Yeah.
That was one of the complaints last year. And see.
Mhm. Mike is the guy over there.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll see if I can reach out.
perfect.
So, but if there's other violations, if you can get a company's name off the truck, that would be helpful, because then we can try to stop them and educate them, or contact the supervisor and say, hey, your driver's doing this. Because a lot of times the supervisor probably don't know the driver.
Right.
Violated those. That would be a big fine.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, you can't get too much bigger than a 1-ton pickup truck and you're over 5 ton.
yeah. Or the other thing, like we spoke, is I can reach out to state and see if we can get their commercial there. Maybe down here for a weekend or.
Yeah.
So. We'll do something. We'll work on it.
Perfect. Sounds good. Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it. Be safe.
Yep.
All right, consent agenda. Those items on the consent council agenda, which are considered routine, non-controversial, are included as part of the consent agenda. Unless a council member specifically requests that an item on the consent agenda be removed and considered separately, items on the consent agenda are considered under one motion, a second, and a vote. Any item removed from the consent agenda shall be placed at the end of general business. Tonight on the consent agenda, one item, and that would be to approve the February 21st, 2023 city council meeting minutes. Does anybody like to pull that and consider it separately? Otherwise, I would take a motion to approve consent. So moved. Thank you, Jay.
Second.
Thank you, Abe. We've got a motion and a second to approve consent agenda as approved. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Open forum. The public forum is intended to afford the public an opportunity to address concerns to the council. The public forum will be no longer than 30 minutes in length, and each presenter will have no more than 5 minutes to speak. Topics of discussion are restricted to local governmental topics rather than private or political agendas. The council may discuss but will not take formal action on public forum presentations. Is there anybody here tonight that'd like to speak in public forum? Sir, if you don't mind coming up to the podium up there, there should be a sign-in sheet up there. If you would, your name and address on there, and when you're ready to start, if you'll start with your name and address. Yep, you're good.
My name is Lucas Kent, and you're representing one of the properties here, PID number 04330196. I'm here today with my wife, Sarah. On November 2020, we purchased a lot here on the corner of Lucerne and Vernon. During that purchase, I attempted to do my due diligence and called both the township and county and received a very similar response from both. To paraphrase, quote, Credit River will be going to adopt the Scott County zoning ordinance. I took the time to read through the comprehensive plan and saw that the city plan for the lot become a single family home. The plan also mentioned that housing opportunities and local residential zoning, which my land is a part of, would continue in the same quote manner and pattern as previously permitted under the Scott County comprehensive plan and development durations, end quote, which reassured me of these statements. We even had a septic contractor come out to verify the land to get the septic system installed. Since we bought the land, since then, we bought the land, appointed 40 houses and builders in the area, and prepared to build our house. We talked to multiple builders who had built houses in Credit River, in the township, and then did the project. Once we chose our builder, we looked on our construction loan. We then learned that there was an issue with our permit. Noted we then required planning because our lot was created 40 years ago. There to fighting being required. And a wetland delineation was going to be required. After doing my own research and some conversation with the city, I builder and others, I learned that all of these requirements were due to changes to make this zoning ordinances here in Credit River that were not present under county zoning ordinance. We are here today in front of council to explain the real world impact of these changes to the zoning ordinance that we adopted to a landowner on the only non-subdividable home developed unprivate lot, the rural residential zone of Credit River. The requirement to plat properties, all properties, rather than just for institutional uses. In addition, changes to the exceptions to what projects needed to perform an erosion sediment control plan have affected our project as well. This change likely impacts all new constructions that aren't part of the subdivision. Previously under Scott County, there is an exception for projects that imported less than 500 cubic yards of material. This exception was changed to allow only up to 100 cubic yards of moved material rather than soil. These changes impact our construction in a particular way if they result in the need for a wetland delineation. This would delay starting our planning for a few months as it would require that plants should be growing, thus waiting until late April or early May, as planning requires a wetland delineation under section 927.02 5B-2 of the subdivision regulation. After plat can be created, there's a minimum of month delay for the planning board to review the proposal. In total, that means it could be into June before we dig our foundation and begin the project. 4 months delay from today. In conclusion, we request for a permit to be further through section 1-3.2 because only shall not conflict and be subject and shall be based upon and implement the township's comprehensive plan. End quote. As a result of having to review and understand the changes of the last year, We feel these changes are not complying with the commitment that zoning would be handled in quote, the same pattern as previously permitted under the Scott County Comprehensive Plan Development Regulation, and end quote. And that the quote, flexible zoning tools to encourage the private sector, end quote, are unavailable, given that there are 4 to 6 months a year that wetland studies cannot be done. If we cannot have a permanent proof, we would like an explanation of why these changes are made, and make them to the comprehensive plan. Thank you for your time today.
Okay, thank you, Lucas. Anybody have any questions or anything? Lucas has been in touch with Cindy quite a bit. Okay. And was explained to why that was put in and what the process is. Additionally, on that piece of property, we'd probably not issue a building permit without a wetland delineation anyways, because of where the wetland and the stream are through that property. We no way to check the setbacks.
For correction point, there is no public water stream on it.
But there's water, there's a pond and a stream on the property.
The pond is a wastewater detention pond put in the utility and zoning easement.
Mhm.
Was this having to do with the shoreland?
No, it's not.
So what was the
it's not
change?
shoreline.
When was the purchase? When are we talking?
A few months, November of 2020, and during that time, I did review the comprehensive post and saw the changes that were proposed and agreed with them, as you stated you would not be changing the manner or pattern from Scott County.
Yeah, I think we adopted zoning the next month after they purchased it, so it was well underway. So anybody that on our staff that would have talked to them would have been well underway, that would have been, even at Scott County.
So at that
Knew
level,
at that time.
we adopted the Scott County ordinance, which he's now in conflict with, or
I am not.
Scott
You're not
County
in
does,
conflict.
Scott County does not require planning.
they do not.
They do not.
Okay. Okay. We have a variance process, don't we, with our planning commission? Is there, I mean, the proper thing to do would be to talk to Cindy. Go through with Cindy, and if there's some relief that needs to be made. For that, I mean, that could certainly be heard. By,
There's 2 possible methods of relief. One would possibly be, like you mentioned, applying for a variance. Because it's not a use, that use is already allowed, it would just be under the rules of the.
that might provide some relief from a rule based on, with further
The-
review.
The other issue, option would possibly be to apply for a text amendment to the ordinance, to actually request that the zoning ordinance be amended to allow, to modify the current language being used to give relief.
That is in the statute 473.835.
I'm familiar with the statute.
So,
It's kind of an occupational hazard of mine,
but the difference between a variance and a text amendment is
A
very
very,
large.
it is, a variance would be for a specific piece of property. Sort of in
A
sense,
circumstance.
waiving the rules based
Right.
on a unique set of circumstances.
Correct.
Versus changing it for everybody because the law hasn't changed. But
Mhm.
those are the only really 2 options that I see under your current, and I haven't looked at any of the stuff that you've.
So I'm just
talked
going
about.
by what I heard, and
Yeah.
I'm not really reviewing it, but
Yeah,
that's, to me, that's what a variance is for, is to
to at least.
take another consideration of it, to see if there's something that's maybe an undue circumstance for that the law doesn't, or the ordinance doesn't apply to correctly, but and then with a further review, it could possibly be that it's not as needed for that particular instance. I think that's the right way to go. Unfortunately, your process is probably, it's gonna take you a couple of months, but if we could certainly, this would be, what would his thing would be to probably talk to Cindy, probably get it in front of the planning commission first.
You have to apply, you have to go escrow. Go through the application process.
And there's
get
no
all the stuff
guarantee.
Together, well, I think the struggle would be, don't they have to prove hardship? That's not financial though,
Right,
yeah.
but it's those are the 2 avenues.
Right.
Mhm.
And out of the 2, variance is the one that.
Yeah.
I don't see any traction for changing the language of the ordinance after you
We've already
recently
processed
adopted it.
probably 6
Right.
of those.
But if
Yeah.
there was something unique to your property, and I don't know if you've talked to Cindy about obtaining a variance.
Yeah, it did not, the only variant she said we should apply for would be a,
The driveway
The
one
driveway
would have to
one,
be
yes.
required because of where the driveway would come out down the county road.
But that's a requirement under some division section, not necessarily.
So at issue is the wetland?
I don't, it's hard to follow every.
Yeah.
In order to do the planning process, you have to delineate the wetlands. And you can't do that in the wintertime.
No. Okay,
I guess my other thing is, the fact that in the comprehensive plan, you include the language for, that you will not be changing the matter. of The Minnesota statute requires that the zoning ordinances be in compliance, along with your own regulation to those rules. But I believe a text amendment would be the correct course of action here. And you're in violation, in my opinion, like a comprehensive plan and that promise you make to the community.
okay, that's your opinion, but what is the violation? You could explain that more.
In comprehensive plan, in the future land use section, in the rural residential section, you state, and I quote here, that zoning up, that housing opportunities would continue in the same quote manner and pattern as previously permitted under Scott County Comprehensive Plan and Development Regulation. I don't see how that can be interpreted in a way that doesn't state that you are going to continue to allow for the same manner as Scott County.
That doesn't mean that we're gonna follow Scott County in every single instance, because Scott County operates under chapter 394. We're operating under chapter 462 of the statute. There's different rules.
So we have to follow certain things.
So we have our own rules of things, and we have to also comply with the Metropolitan Council's issues and concerns. And so we don't have a complete free hand, and complying with your comprehensive plan just means within terms of basically density, residential versus commercial, things like that, where you put this in place. It doesn't mean a generic statement. And I think we've lived up to that statement, where you didn't do a wholesale, have my office draft a whole new zoning ordinance or subdivision ordinance for you. We took Scott County's and then made it our own.
Updated language.
To the extent that you guys felt it was appropriate. We went through it, chapter by chapter, and we were there for the meetings, and that's how we did it. So
Yeah.
I guess I just professionally disagree with that, but I understand where you're coming from, but it is something that you should possibly talk to Cindy about, specifically about, she could probably tell you whether, I'd hate for you to spend the money on a variance and go through the process and then just have staff come out and say, we are not going to support it. Because typically the council will listen to their professional staff, myself as the attorney, the engineer, the planner, we're going to tell them the pros and the cons. They ultimately make the decisions. The planning commission processes any application request. They hold the public hearing. They give detailed recommendations and stuff to the city council, but the city council here ultimately makes the decision whether to grant it or not.
Sure.
I think we've kind of used up the 5 minutes quite a bit,
Yeah,
But,
we give a little bit of leeway at times.
but we have a short night. What I'm just wondering now, what is the timeline for getting a wetland delineation? What's the next?
Depends on the weather.
So we're looking at a thaw, melt, end of April,
Possibly,
and
and probably at the best.
yeah, at the earliest. Is this something that we could put him on the agenda to come in and speak more about it, or suggest that he talks to Cindy more?
I think
Or
we're
put
gonna
him
work
in
through
front of-
staff because without having staff to. Investigate the different thought processes or ideas, we'd be spinning our wheels at a council meeting with.
Okay, so would it be maybe something, putting it in front of the planning commission or at least an initial sit down or a chat with them on their agenda?
But without an application for something, then we're just talking in general terms.
And the application is
An
spend some
application.
money in escrow or not. Okay. As in my lifetime, I've applied and sought a couple of variances for things and certainly had them granted. So, it's kind of near and dear to my heart, but we should, I don't want to say no to you. I think there's a couple of things that are kind of important, which one is the wetland thing, because we're kind of stuck with wetlands too. So we have to follow. We can't necessarily just grant relief from a wetland or from a process to do that. So my urging would be for you to follow the process and then see, I would talk to Cindy more to see how you could move this along. I understand your need to dig before June, because that kind of, if you're building a house, it's kind of important, but maybe we can help you get along the process, at least be digging by June, not after.
We've done that, we, once that piece is done.
Then we
had
can do a lot
special
more.
Planning commission meetings.
Right,
We've gotten, we do a council meeting every other week.
yeah,
You
so
know,
we
there
could
isn't- there is a
feed
delay in
things
those
in.
pieces, right? Those pieces
Yeah.
happen fast.
But the problem
It's
is we
getting the
need to
first
get the
step.
first, we need to get the wetland
Mhm.
delineation. So figure out how quickly you can get that. then you
And
can
again,
get back.
plan or not, the comment from staff is that in order to check the setbacks of the homes
Yep,
anyways,
we need to,
the wetland delineation would have to be done.
okay. So it sounds like that's your process. And,
So
and you
you're
could,
recommending I wait the multiple months here until.
I'm just waiting, I'm recommending that you get a wetland delineation so that everybody can kind of move it along. We can help you move once you reach that step, I don't think you're gonna find favor here with altering the text of the ordinance. But it's my thought on it. I don't know what everybody else is. I'd like to help you. But I think from the sounds of it, we need at least that one key part, and then we can help possibly make some things move along for you to speed up the rest of the process.
And the only way to get a wetland report is by having some physically come in and with the collected data available at the county level or collected previously on the road team.
That's a technical question.
Yeah,
I don't
know
think
the
we'll have the
answer.
answer to that one here. That's
Something
staff,
probably
our
Cindy
engineer-
would be able to look up, or the
engineer
engineer
would
would.
be.
It's more of a Shane
It
question.
is a
Yeah.
shame question, yeah.
So collectively, what is the direction that we are going to give this gentleman tonight to go forward? We've had a lot of comments, whatever. He's looking for some direction as to next steps, and I think we owe him that.
I think the only options that we have are to work with staff on,
Yep.
number one is, would a variance be even possible? Or B.
Yep.
Go forward on the path of getting the wetland delineation and completing the planning process.
Mr. McDowell,
Yeah,
couldn't we
yeah.
recommend going to Shane as well and seeing if we can use some of that data from historical purposes, or is that even not?
We could pass that question along to engineering,
I
yeah,
mean, it's worth, or at least
right.
give some determination.
Hey, I don't know how long,
Right,
I don't know when would have maybe possibly been done when they did 8. When they did the roundabout, I don't know how big of an area that covered or how long ago, I can't remember how long ago that was and when they expired, so. That's the only thing I don't know on that.
so
We
it
could
sounds like
definitely-
our answer is. Need to deal with staff. Cindy would do the directing in terms of asking Shane if the past information might still be applicable. And to go from there. I mean, I think we all want to help. I don't think anybody is saying, well, we're just gonna turn our backs, but I think so it sounds like that's the direction that we're given, right? Work through staff. Through the planner. And I think we as a council will be very supportive of doing everything that we can do to get you able to build your house.
And I don't know the rules on that, but you said there may have been a wetland delineation in that area
So
because
the
of a road project?
Scott County built that roundabout at that corner.
So there may be a wetland delineation, the
possible.
work may have already been done, that may have encompassed that area. That would be something
That would help.
well,
Mhm.
if
That might solve.
yeah,
issue.
and I don't know if that answers the question that's required under the ordinance, but it's a step in the right direction. But I think your options are to work with staff to keep moving your project forward, or you could apply for the variance that you've heard about here tonight. That's, you can go through Cindy to do that. And you could also technically apply for a, what they call a text amendment to the change of the zoning ordinance, which you were referring to. But that, you've already heard, that probably would not find favor with the council, and I'd hate for you to spend the application fee and all the stuff to, for something like that. But the variance, I would ask Cindy, what's your chances of getting it?
Okay.
I hate for you to spend money on something when a lot of times we can tell it's probably not a good idea, or at least we won't we can't stop you from doing it, but we wouldn't recommend it, you know,
And who ultimately approves variances? Is that-
We do.
this board.
This board would approve.
Mhm.
So I have to request from Sydney to see if you guys would approve that.
What you're asking Cindy is, as the professional planner, would she recommend that to the planning commission and the city council? If she says, no, I can't recommend that, that kind of gives you an answer that you have an uphill battle to get this council to go against what their professional staff is recommending to them on the issue. I just don't want you spending money on the application and time and putting all the stuff together if you find out that the engineer, the planner, or myself are gonna come to this body and say, we can't recommend this for these reasons, you know?
Now, the reason for a variance is not necessarily, it can't be for just financial. It's financially, it's beneficial to you for us to give you a variance. But if you have a unique situation that doesn't quite seem to follow the reason that ordinance is in place in the first place, you know, that it's possible that if it's explained right, that it can be viewed, reviewed, and granted under its own unique circumstances. That's really what a variance is. And
You're correct. Why some of these changes were made, you referenced them, but I could be student.
I'm
It
not
would just
sure.
be every meeting of the then town board, when they're
Right.
doing it, was open to the public. By law, these meetings are open to the public. I don't know if any of them were, I don't remember,
Well, some of the stuff was adopted from Met Council, right?
Well, and
I mean, there was.
but it was still
taking-
adopted. by this
taking,
body.
most of it was the county ordinances that
Were in place,
updated, that
were
hadn't,
updated.
We updated the language.
Right.
Put in some other pieces, plating was one piece that, I think we kind of added because we kind of felt strong about it because there was a lot of problems because some lots were not platted in the past. We're up against one right now that if planning was not a requirement, there could be an administrative split. That would be a problem because there's a road easement coming up to it. And it could be done without us making a decision on whether we want to keep that road easement.
Right.
So without planning, that would have just gone through. We would have had no idea.
And so by
there's-
doing a text amendment to
Mhm.
eliminate those things, I mean, those were some of the reasons that those were there.
Right.
So
The
which
controls.
is again, you come back to the
I
variance.
do not
The thing.
recall, and this gentleman's asking, can I go back and look at, some of this historical documents? I don't remember at that time was there video capability, or was there old video feed from that time? I doubt it.
20.
I mean, this would have been probably discussed that wouldn't have been before 2020. We didn't do that till 2020.
But there'd be minutes out there that you'd have access to, but again, that's about all there would be.
Yeah, I would definitely say, just think about what you're looking at, try to figure out what the hardship is to you. And try to explain that. And then and I would, like Chris says, talk to the city, or to our planner about what she feels about it, so that you get a good feel. Maybe you run back by her, you're looking for relief from, which is the variance. You're looking for relief from the ordinance. So look at trying to get that, trying to get her to buy in on it. Maybe she can make some suggestions to you on how it would better go. Eventually it comes to us and we decide on it. But you want to sell us on it. That's for sure. I mean, I can just tell you out of experience, I watched years ago, my old math teacher was trying to get a variance to concrete his entire backyard in the city that I lived in. And he was there, and his reason was simply that he didn't want to mow it. He lost. You know, but but other ones win, you know, and that's what you want to. It can't just be because it's easier for you. It's because there's something you need relief from. Sounds like you need relief from this a little bit. So, but
All right,
Have we
That's
given
it.
them direction? I believe we
I think
have.
so. Thank you, Lucas. Anybody else for open forum tonight? Peter?
People are accessing 165th Street East. And wanted to speak a little bit about your coming general business item 7.1. In regards as far as the comment on the methodology of the retroactive pay. I've read your agenda that we have online, and the general business item is recommending the council to authorize retroactive pay to January 1st at the rate of the finance director. Alternatively, all in that same general business item, it gives also gives the option of the retroactive pay to January will be based on the actual hours worked at the rate of the treasurer's position, brought at 5% cost of living allowance. What I feel is that the recommended action to use the finance director rate is not a good precedent. This recommendation exhibits, I think, are some bad mechanics in that someone is getting retroactive pay for a position they did not have, and for a position that did not exist at that time, between January to February. I know a position we held at the meeting was February 21st when the finance director was actually put into place and given to Dominic. I've got a couple other comments I want to go into before I wrap up on this. During that meeting, I noticed that no outside applications were taken for the position of finance director. I felt that as a professional employer, what a professional employer should do is recognize good staff members and promote from within. I thought this was very commendable. Secondly, based on the salary figures, based on the financial impact section of that business item, financial director rate of pay indicates at least an estimated 26.2 increase over the previous salary that the treasurer at that time had, which also includes that 5% increase. Pay increase is very good considering current market condition and is well above current inflation rates. My bottom line to the city council and the mayor, to avoid setting a precedent, that I feel that the suggested action should be to use the treasurer's rate plus the 5% COLA, because it actually represents the actual position held by the recipient for the January to February period. And on top of that, I want to thank you, Dominic, for all your service to Credit River, and congratulations on your promotion.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Anybody else for open forum tonight? Seeing none, we will close open forum and move on to general business. And in general business, we have two items. We'll start with 7.1. Approve retroactive compensation of Treasurer Dominique Hill. Last month or last meeting, we did approve the position and the position change for Dominique. There was a recommendation from one council member that as we move forward with the payroll change, that we make that payroll change retroactive back to January 1st. In your packet tonight, you have a staff report from Administrator McNeil with the financial impact of that. The financial impact difference of that is $3,670 for that time. So I guess open for discussion at this point of after reading the staff report. I think that's where we were at the end of this discussion topic at the last meeting.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, what was the budget for this position and for 2023?
That was in the document, it was included at one else. If you don't mind. me jumping in.
No, I appreciate you answering that.
No,
Thank you,
it was
Dominique.
weird.
You know the budget. Mr. Mayor. Well, I was the
Councilmember
one that
Lawrence.
made the recommendation. And I made the comment, and I think some people may thought I was kidding, but I was serious. Dominique has been, we've gotten very good value for the work she has done. Naming her to the position of finance director is one thing, and it was certainly well-deserved, and appreciate the comment from the public about that as well. But being involved, we hired her when staff reported to the township board. And knowing the work that has been done, knowing the dedication, she's been doing this job with that job description much longer before January 1st of this year. So I think it's warranted. The budget calls for it. We are only as good as our staff is, and we have an excellent staff member here, and I believe she deserves it. But I won't make a motion until we get other comments.
Okay. Okay, so I have a comment. So, I'm just kind of reading through the thing, and there was a question of additional hours that were worked, or it's brought up in the alternatives. It says the council could authorize retroactive pay to at the treasurer rate plus the 5% COLA and include payment for the extra hours worked during January and February. The total compensation for the extra hours alone is $5,801.48. That would be in addition to her standard base pay of $8,216 for the above reference total of $14,000. That's, I'm trying to figure out exactly what we have here. The difference would be if we were to bump her to the retroactive pay, it would be $17,688, which is a difference of $36.7039, and or $18.35 per month. Was there a question that we should be compensating for extra hours for January and February? There was some discussion of that, and I'm trying to remember how that
Right,
went.
so again, thinking into what happens in that position in January, February with the audit. The new fiscal year and all that the extra time was put in at that moment. And I don't remember if we had captured and had, I know we captured it. I know we captured your time. We've asked. We've had
Yeah,
that time.
it's in there, but I was paid at
Right.
part-time. I was paid for
Right.
80 hours.
Yep.
But if you look at the sign-offs that you approved, I worked 193
Yep.
hours, and then I worked 130 hours in February, so Mark calculated what it would be at the treasurer rate versus, because Brent had recommended.
Right.
And Chris had asked, what is
The
difference?
in dollars, correct.
All right, so what's the actual amount she was compensated? Is that the 14,000 level so far? And then
No,
you were compensated less than that.
260.
Yeah, okay. So there's a question that if it was a salary or part-time salary and at just a minimum that we were paying out, that we could we could fairly compensate more. Looks like another 5,800. Or am I reading that right? We are also compensating her for that plus 3670 if we take this recommendation.
correct.
So a total of another 8,000 or 9,000.
I think that, Jay, the dollar difference, if you take the suggested action of authorizing the retroactive pay, go back to January 1, the dollar is
3670. Right.
this alternative suggestion would be is that if you go at the rate
It would be 0, right?
effectively zero, or if you decided to compensate extra for the extra time worked, would be $5,800.
Okay. So we're looking at paying an additional 58 or
36,
or 36 or 0.
right? Yeah, because that could be the other decision.
No. The
Does-
decision is, I think, you compensate at the treasurer rate for the hours worked, or you compensate it at the director level.
Retroactive.
Yeah.
This reads interestingly. I'm just trying to put together. So we have three options or we have two?
So question,
Yes,
part-time was salary? Part-time was hourly? Cause I mean, that's, I think where Jay's going is this salary, we're saying you were working 80 hours.
And you worked
You're
130,
contracted for
100.
80 hours.
It's an agreed upon kind of average. So it's an average of, in any given year, it's around 84 hours.
Okay. And how often are we going over 84 hours a month over the last 12 months? How many hours do you think is average?
20. 10 to 20.
I think it's in the budget. I think you got a year under your belt.
And
Working
January
extra.
was, well, December, and then you can look back to like December, was way big Brent only. Jane,
There's probably 6 months where it's quite a bit over.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, we do the get ready for the budget. and all that.
Well, yeah,
Takes-
budget process starts in June.
Yeah.
That's not a single month,
Right,
you know, all the other pieces that come forward.
so.
Mr. Mayor, I got us into this. Well, whether people agree or not,
I don't think you got us into anything. I think it
Well,
was
but
a
I've-
relevant
I've-
discussion, Brent, so.
so as long as I have the floor, I am going to make the motion that we should authorize retroactive pay to January 1st for Dominique Hill at the rate of the finance director. The amount of the additional pay would be $3,670.39.
but
Okay.
it's also
Wouldn't that be-
additional 5,000.
Yeah, we're really talking closer to 9.
Yeah,
So it's either 5 or plus the 3,000.
the 3,000 is the difference between, but yeah, it's closer to 9.
So we're voting to spend 9,000. Is that, we have a
Mhm.
discussion on that or not?
Well, we have a motion,
Well, I'm going reading through this and understanding it that the suggested action and that's what it would be, the amount of additional pay versus that of the treasurer with extra the compensable hours would be that. So
Right, and the suggested action is from our administrator.
yes, Mark wrote the report tonight.
But I think that's a little misleading because. If we're paying for 80 hours, we're not really. Having to compensate for those 58, so we're actually looking at 58 plus 36.
Right, well, that's what I was trying to get to in my questioning. So it is closer to 9,000 that we're actually voting to spend.
all right, I'll withdraw my motion. It sounds like we need a different motion with a different dollar amount, then, right?
The motion doesn't necessarily have to contain a dollar amount, Brent. The motion could be to pay the
58.
pay the Dominique retroactive to Jan 1 with the finance director rate. Okay,
Well, I withdrew, so I will make a new motion that we should authorize retroactive pay to January 1st at the rate of the finance director, period.
okay.
I'll second it.
All right, we've got a motion and a second to approve retroactive pay to January 1st for Dominique at the rate of the finance director. Any further discussion?
Can I just make one statement?
Yes.
I'm fiscally conservative beyond belief. And usually I would go against this. But I feel as if we've gotten a little bit of a bargain, and I think it's just time to get her up to what she should. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, any other?
Yeah.
Sorry, Leroy.
One comment, and we've done this before, probably about 3 or 4 times. To bring it back to January 1, easier to keep track of. When it comes to the year.
Okay, I'll have the same comment. I'm thinking that I should be saying no to spending $9,000, but on the other hand, we have an employee who's doing a good job, has worked more than the hours already. I just kind of just say at the same time, it's not really smart to short our finance director as our first act with her as the finance director.
Okay, all right, so,
Call the question.
yep, all right, so now I've got a motion and a second to approve retroactive pay for Dominique Hill at the rate of the finance director back to January 1. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you, Dominique. Moving on to 7.2, last month, Councilmember Schomer brought to us a, what do they call it, a driver feedback sign, a technical term, right?
So
Basically a radar sign that gives you the feedback of your speed. One in particular that can be moved around to different locations and hung on a signpost. And the question posed then was, to go back and do some more research. What does it cost to get one that does collect the data? Rather than just being a
Correct.
passive sign
Correct.
on a post, right? Leroy reached out to his source again. Jake came back this afternoon with that price. So the one we considered at the last meeting, the first initial proposal was a radar sign, a simple radar sign, no data collection, but it did have a solar panel on it. That was $4,300.15. If we go with the portable radar sign that does collect data, no solar panel, and it does run for about 7 days on a charge, it's a rechargeable battery, it's $33.92. If we want a solar panel, it's an extra $1,700. I would recommend against the solar panel
plug it in.
because you're not going to deploy this for more than about 7 days in any given location anyways. And then you'd collect the data, remove the sign, charge it, move it to a new location, or put it back to where it is.
All right, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember
Did I hear
Schlitterbach.
Did I hear that correct then? The sign with data
Mhm.
without the solar is actually less than
So
what we
remember,
were looking at
yes.
originally?
So remember that the initial proposal was one with a solar panel on it.
Correct,
Yeah,
for 4,300.
correct.
And we can buy this for 40 or for 33
Mhm.
without,
Without a solar
Without the
panel,
solar
but
and
it will
battery.
collect data,
and it will collect data.
right?
I think we were really interested in having data.
I think that's the more important piece of this. I mean, if you get 7 days out of an operation to sign, collect your data.
Who's going to collect? I mean, we've got to put the sign up and down. It downloads into something.
Yeah, there's a couple different ways. It can do Bluetooth with Android. It can do, I think there's a connection to laptop or anything like that as well. So a couple of different ways to do that.
So his question, I think, is what are we gonna do with the data, or how are,
Well,
what is our?
I'm not sure
cost?
if that was, I think that's one of the questions. But to expand on it further, we're still going to, and I'm not against this, but we're still gonna have to, someone's gonna have to put it up, take it down, take the information, decide where it charge is. Leroy, are you gonna, I'm fine if you do that.
I'll put it up, take it down, but
You're
I'm
good?
not plugging into it.
Oh, come on, Leroy. You have an Android phone. We'll get you all set up with
Okay.
Bluetooth and
Somebody else can get the data. I'll screw it up is what I'll do.
Where are we gonna store it?
Keep it in the
we
shed.
keep in the shed with our other signs and other stuff.
Hopefully, you're gonna have it out quite a bit, I would think.
Typically those are summer
Yeah.
operations.
Yep.
When you do that.
Because the residents'
It's-
question always is, how many people were speeding and
Yeah.
how fast were they going and.
Or even to that point, it's
Yeah.
the people are driving fast in my neighborhood,
Or your neighbor?
right?
Jeff just said they had one up and The average speed was 16 miles an hour in the neighborhood,
Yeah,
30 mile an hour, so. Meant 2 people went through at 50 miles an hour, the rest were
under.
going really slow.
Mhm.
Do we know what this data is gonna look like? Is it gonna be able to tell us what we think it's gonna tell us?
Yeah, it'll tell you number of cars that have come by, time of day, what their average speed was.
Okay, summarization then, or is it just the raw data?
No, I think it can get
summarized?
both. Yeah, looking at, again, looked at it quickly this afternoon, this came in this afternoon, so it's kind of hot off the press. Quick look at it, it looks like we get detail and summaries.
And I would guess that information's gotta be public, so we have to retain it somewhere, probably. I would think.
I don't know, that would be a question for Bob, but whether that's a legal,
I'm sorry, what was the question?
whether data from a speed limit or like a radar feedback sign would be public information.
It should be because it's information that was generated by the government unless
Mhm.
I can find something that says it's private. And I'm
I
not
mean, it
aware
doesn't,
of
it doesn't identify anybody, so I can't believe that it would be. I mean, it's just
It's
cars coming by, right?
Yes,
Numbers.
that would be
Yeah.
data, and everything under Minnesota law is presumed public
Mhm.
unless there is a specific reference in statute says it's private.
Yeah,
So we just have to decide where we're going to store that. What the keeper of the info is going to be.
And
but
I guess,
that's no different than the rest of our data, Brent. I mean, it's just a folder in our. in our
what would be
shared
our,
files?
what would be our ongoing cost of sharing the data under requests?
No different than any other request. If it's stuff that is computer driven, I mean, I don't know how it works. I'm like Leroy. But if you, if you download it and it goes to a computer program, it
Should
should
be
be
fairly
nothing
simple to
because
share.
it's, you email it over to the person or you give it to them on a finger drive, or if they want to pay for it to be printed out and pay the costs and stuff, then we could, I guess if there's a way to do it, you could physically print it out and give.
Yeah, I
it
guess
as-
my question is, we would just have a responsibility sharing the raw data that we had, not necessarily compiling it, so. that it's-
Under
Mhm.
Minnesota Data Practices Act, we are not under any obligation to modify, summarize, or do it. What we have to do is somebody asks for it.
We have to be
and
able to
it's-
give it.
We have it, and whatever format it is in.
So if we were to just say we were gonna take a neighborhood and we were going to analyze the data to find out what the average speed and everything else is, as long as we collected that data and analyzed it, then we'd need to share it as that was. But if somebody asked us to compile it and tell them, we wouldn't have to go through the cost to do
No,
that. So if
the
we did
only-
nothing with the data, we could just give them the raw data, but if we'd done something with it, we
Exactly.
have to share what we did, but we're not under an obligation.
If
to
we've
do.
already compiled a summary.
Right,
And we have it in our possession.
then we would be,
Exactly.
then we would share it, but if we wouldn't have to
Create that
compile or
summary.
create,
No,
all
and
this
you,
stuff. We
and,
didn't want to
and
do it.
you guys have gotten it and all from companies wanting us to summarize their building permit
Yeah.
data and things like that for their own businesses. And then they sell it, you know,
Yeah.
and no, we're not obligated to do that.
I think we just go back to that button, delete all.
Empty trash.
Whoops.
I think it's important to have the data.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes,
so
Brett.
we have hired the Scott County Sheriff's Department to be our law enforcement firm operation here. Why wouldn't we just give them the information? Then they can analyze it and then they keep it.
Or we tell them we have information that's available to them.
Yeah.
If they ask for it, we'll give it to them.
And they'd want to have it so
Yeah.
that they could determine what time of day people are speeding, so they
Yep.
can get them and then we can buy more signs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not that, it's pretty easy to figure that piece out.
I think it's a pretty good buy for what we're getting.
Yep.
Mhm.
I still like just delete all, but you're right, but I'll just throw that out. So let's do it. I'll make the motion to spend the $3,300 on the radar sign.
Okay,
I'll second.
I have a motion, I have a second. A motion, a second, any further discussion?
And I've got a question. Where's
Yes.
the money coming from?
Good
So,
question.
I can jump in.
Thank you.
Because Leroy had
That was the other topic from last week.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, the budget I mentioned last week, in the expense budget, we had $15,000, which would include something like this for signs. In terms of the revenue that we get from signs, and we get 30%. Since that started in 2019, we've gotten a cumulative of 25,345.28. And last time we bought signs, it was 11,100. So if you think of it from a fund standpoint, we kind of have in the kitty 14,000 that has to be spent on this type of thing, but we plan to spend 15,000. So if we were to go over 14,000 with those funds, then I would recommend an amendment to the budget over the 15,000. But I think, I don't know, Leroy, you can answer, like in terms of what we're planning to spend on signs.
Maybe 5,000.
Yeah.
5,000.
Maybe more, because if we're gonna do the city entrance signs, we would put some posts in, huh?
When
This spring.
we gotta get some land first.
No, the entrance signs, the city of signs
Oh,
we have
those.
made.
We got those last year.
I know, but we have to get
Signs.
posts and have them installed.
That was gonna be.
They're
Four-
4,000,
Yeah.
right?
So we have 5, 3,
Yeah.
4, that's,
And we probably have a handful of other signs that need to be
15.
replaced.
Yep.
Yeah,
so that
49.
30,92 fits in, but we certainly with the fund balance. You could think of amendment. The other thing I wanted to call out, was in 2019, we spent 9,600. 2020, 4,500, 2021, 12,008. And last year we only spent 5,163 on road sign,
mhm,
that budget line. So that kind of gives you the
right.
fund perspective and expense perspective.
So is that the fund balance still then show 14,000? Is that where, or is that going to the general
It
fund?
sits in the road and bridge.
Okay.
The
So-
14,000,
The 14 is the.
the fine, the money from the fines.
Correct, so, the road and bridge, fund is way over the 50% required, so what we have is a fund balance. And then we have our revenue coming in and our expenses, and for our expenses for the upcoming year, we need to have at least, we like to have 30 to 60%. But road and bridge is sitting fairly high, like I wanna say, I don't have it in front of me, but I wanna say it's close to.
Of the expected
Definitely over
expenditures.
50%.
Yeah.
Which is where the council likes to be, their requirement is 30 to 60.
And that policy was based upon the fact that we receive revenues twice a year.
June, December, and then we have just a trickle in January with late payments, but you need to be able to pay for things with money only coming in
Okay,
twice.
any other comments? I have a motion and a second to approve the purchase of a radar feedback sign at the cost of $3,392. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anybody
Aye.
opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Claims listings. Tonight we have
Need a transfer. So the beginning balance is 2018. 218,662.28. We have outstanding checks from the last meeting, so I think the snowstorm has the mail going a little slow. And the claims tonight are 198,128. So I'm proposing to move 235,000. So we have a balance of 156.
Okay,
Mr. Mayor, I'll make the motion. We transfer $235,000 savings to checking.
thank you, Brent.
Second.
Thank you, Abe. We got a motion and a second to approve the transfer of 235,000 and did you do the approval of claims on that too, the 198? Brent, was that per your motion?
Yeah, we can certainly approve the claims tonight of 198,000.
Do it all in one motion?
Yes.
Okay. So I've got the Brent making a motion of transferring 235,000 from savings to checking, along with approving the total listing of claims for 198, 12809. I have a second by Abe. Any further discussion? Otherwise, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Anybody have any council member updates or anything they'd like to bring forward tonight? I guess I've got one thing just to awareness for everybody. One of our former treasurers, she was a treasurer back in the late 90s, early 2000s, Jenny Dahl. Lifelong resident of Red River, passed away Saturday at the age of 89, so
At late 80s, actually.
89.
Yeah,
Yeah, she would have been 90
but
next
but
month.
but she was the treasurer in
Oh,
89.
in 89.
Yeah,
So
so it was
probably
late.
10, 12 years run at that.
Didn't we
yeah.
Leroy, didn't we figure 90?
Well, I think we figured it was like 2004 because that's when Holly replaced her. So,
Yeah,
yeah. So it sounds like funeral will be Saturday morning.
Yeah. she used to write the checks in the back there during the.
That was, she was still doing all the books by hand and ledger.
First time we were off 7 cents on it. When we reviewed our stuff. We were off 7 cents and we sat here 4 hours trying to find it, going over all their little ledgers and stuff. Finally, I said, I'll just throw the 7 cents. She said, we can't do that. She's going over, she goes, oh, look at 5. That. With her pencil, she said, oh, okay, I found it, we're good.
Yep. So keep the family in your
Yeah.
thoughts.
Are we gonna send something over?
So you need a motion on that?
Yeah.
Make a motion, we provide
Or
flowers.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you, Jay.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Leroy. Motion is second to provide some flowers over to Jenny Dahl for the funeral. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Can you help with that?
Yes.
I'll get you the info.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Leroy, did you want to talk about in the liaison, greater, or did you want to do a motion?
That might even be something we cover in the personnel policy,
Yeah,
the terms of payment,
we can do that.
overtime considerations.
Yep,
Yeah,
Sounds good.
okay.
good.
Well, then take a motion to adjourn,
No. Just recess
recess the meeting. Okay.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Leroy.
Second.
Thank you, Abe. Motion and second to recess the regular council meeting. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. We will take a recess, do claims and then